Hello and welcome to Talk from Superheroes. Hey everybody, I'm Andrew Ivamy.
And I'm Diana McCullum.
And you're listening to Talk from Superheroes, where every week we discuss a piece of heroic television or film. And this week on the podcast, it's a big one.
It's a pretty big one. Is this the biggest thing we haven't covered yet?
Oh, I want to say easily so. But I do
Easily.
fear that I'm skipping something else. But you know what? Even if I am forgetting something else, I think easily so.
I think easily so. I mean, I think the only other things with bigger box office or even in the top 10 are like Avatar, which we'll get to obviously because 2's coming out.
Sure.
But like, who cares if we do Avatar?
If you're going financially, then yes,
Financially.
Avatar we have skipped.
Avatar. And
Cultural impact, I think maybe like original series Star Trek films, you know, like your Wrath of Khan or something. If we're talking about like impact as well.
Actually, I will say we've never touched upon a Harry Potter.
Oh, that is true.
That's a pretty big one that we're just like, it's not coming up.
We're just gonna let that raft float off into the sunset on that one.
Some fandoms are too big to add to your repertoire.
Yeah. And
it's
now
a
too
bad time.
problematic as well. Yeah.
Not a good time to add Harry Potter
Yeah,
in. So this is
yeah.
probably the biggest no-go that we've had so far.
That was one we were never into, and we're like, at some point we'll force it for the podcast.
And then J.K. Rowling was like, don't worry about it.
It's like, I'm gonna burn that for you, and we're like, cool. Thanks. Yeah,
Excellent.
we're not gonna be doing that one. You POS. So yeah, I think that this is probably the biggest then. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we are doing this because Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power is coming out on Amazon.
That's
so it's
right.
a little bit of a build-up.
The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power will be released on Amazon, the Amazon original series, and in anticipation for that, we're gonna be doing just the first one, just the Fellowship of the Ring,
Just a taste.
just a taste.
You know what? We got to hold on to 2 more in case we need them later.
That's a great point. You need something in the chamber, you know.
You got to have a top 10 ready to come out.
That's right. So that's what we're doing right now. And as well, if you want more of this podcast, earlier the month we were doing a bit of a Predator tip because Prey came out and we loved it. If you hadn't listened to that episode, we loved Prey. Go check it out. And if you want more of us and more episodes, we did Aliens versus Predator Requiem over on the Patreon, an obscene title for an obscene film.
And also, in July, we did part 2 of Stranger Things, which I only bring up because we're still getting messages asking us when we're going to do part 2, because part 1 was on the public podcast.
That's
so
right.
part 2 is on the Patreon. Sorry that they're in separate places, but
Yeah.
it's been covered.
To the people who have reached out and be like, are you going to cover the finale of Stranger Things? Appreciate you reaching out.
Oh.
Yes, we have. If it's in the budget, it's over on our Patreon. We're not trying to force you to do that, but we do an exclusive one there every month. Sometimes things wind up there if they can't fit in the main schedule, and that is the case on that.
Yes, thank you everyone who reached out. Sorry, they're there.
They're there.
That's where they
That's
are.
where they are.
It's-
Or if you're a patron, not sorry.
Hey, they're right there.
Well, welcome to the party, pal. So that's what we have going on over there. But today we're going to be talking about The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. It's a big one. Diana is vibrating.
Let's do it.
Let's get into it.
Let's just do it.
Let's talk about Lord of the Rings. All right, so we have seen The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Ask me the question. Ask me the question.
We've seen the movie. We're going to talk about it. We start each episode with the simple question of, did you like it? And we'll start by asking Diana, did you like it?
Yeah! This is my favorite movie, you guys. It's my absolute... Well, actually, the extended version is probably my favorite movie, but it's the same core movie. Yes, I love Lord of the Rings. I love watching it. I love talking about it. I love everything around it. I love the people in it. It's all good.
It's your favorite. Is this your favorite of the trilogy?
It is my favorite of the trilogy. Mm-hmm. So this is a double down of goodness. Yeah, I think Fellowship is the most beautiful, the most poetic. It's the most like calming and relaxing. Like it's the feel good when you're sick to put on one, because the other ones are like more action heavy and they're very well done. They're all good. But this is the one that you're like, I need to be comforted. I have the flu. And you're just like, I'm in Hobbiton and I'm going to fall asleep. So yeah, I love Lord of the Rings. And now the second question goes to Andrew. Did you like it?
Oh, I like it.
Oh, excellent.
I think it is beautiful. It is wonderful art. It's not for Andrews, which is a turn of phrase that we've taken from Cat Angus over on I Hate It But I Love It. But just the not for Andrews, what that means is, for those of you who aren't familiar with us using that turn of phrase occasionally on the show, everything this is art. I fully appreciate it. It just doesn't unlock the safe where I keep joy in my heart, and I don't know how to explain why. And at no point am I saying it's not good when people are like, well, do you even get that it's good because of this? I do. And it just doesn't unlock where I keep the joy in my heart. It's just one of these things that is on a pedestal. It's a piece of film and cultural history, and I respect the hell out of it. And I think that everyone did a phenomenal job and should be proud of themselves, and it just doesn't get me where I need to be due to my own predispositions towards what I like.
And that's absolutely fine and fair, because people like things that they like. Mm-hmm. There's just certain genres you like, and there's everyone, not just Andrews. Like, some things can be wonderfully, incredibly made, and you're just like, yeah, but like that doesn't do anything for me. Like, good work.
Yeah.
I'm glad other people like it.
Applause all around.
Yeah. Everyone should like it who likes it, but
Yeah.
it doesn't do anything for me. I think we have this exact same conversation about Edgar Wright movies and me.
Sure.
When I watch an Edgar Wright movie, I'm like, very well done. I get why you like this. Does nothing for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that, in terms of personal enjoyment, I have grown to enjoy way more over the years.
Excellent.
Because I think that there has been a journey I have gone on as a person where it's like, I never used to like fantasy. Mm-hmm. Fantasy as a genre was just something that never unlocked the joy in my heart. No matter how well done, no matter where it was on the scale of accomplishing terrific art, fantasy just didn't unlock where I kept my joy. Sci-fi always unlocked it. Poor sci-fi unlocked joy better than the best high fantasy for me.
This dude needs a cell phone in his stories, or they just don't work, you guys.
When I see a spaceship, I'm like, oh yeah, we'll have spaceships someday. But when I see a dragon, I'm like, there's no dragons. There's always part of me that shut down. And also in literature, I never really got into fantasy because I think that there is a two different camps here. Whenever I would open a book, and if the beginning of a book had a map or information about the families or the history before the story began, I was immediately furious. I'm like, I'm bad with real world geography. When I turn on the news and it's like, there was a conflict on the northern border this week, and I'm like, what's north? Name the two things that are fighting right now. So when a novel would do that with made up fantasy words, I would get frustrated and I didn't like it. And I think there are two camps. I was recently listening to an episode of the podcast Script Lock, which is a video game writing podcast. And I can't remember which episode it was, so I'm sorry that I can't attribute it to the correct person. But they were talking about the setup for video games and what works and what doesn't. And it was a woman talking about how she never liked fantasy books because she was like, there's something about a novel that's like, that upfront will be, here's all the information that you need to get the most out of the story we're about to tell you. And she's like, my perspective was that a story's job is to find sneaky ways to give me all of the information that is necessary to get the most joy out of it. And I'm of that camp. But that was just my predisposition. But as life has gone on, I've liked fantasy a lot more.
I'm glad to hear that. I think fantasy is wonderful. I've always been a fantasy fan. I agree that opening a book and just seeing a very detailed map looks like you're instantly doing homework. I think the best version of maps in books, and I always did really like when books did this, I don't know if the Hobbit map does this. I think maybe it does, but some of the Terry Brooks books definitely do, where the map in the beginning will have a little line showing where the characters are going in this book. So you can be like, I don't need to know anything about the fucking south part of this map. I only need to know these two cities. We're going to go here and then go here. So I always really like when there was like a little like indicator of like, how far are we going? Now in Lord of the Rings, that is the entire absolute map. But in The Hobbit, it was just to the Lonely Mountain. So it was a little bit more accessible. But yeah, I've always loved fantasy. And yeah, I totally understand like just opening that up and being like, And also, they're long. There's very few short fantasy books, except maybe The Hobbit, which you actually have told me you really loved.
I read and loved The Hobbit, not
boy.
the trilogy of the series. And I think part of the reason why I've grown to love fantasy more over the years as well is due to the inviting nature of fantasy video games. Is that growing up, I never really liked fantasy literature. It felt very dense, very gated, very memorize these things, and then you're allowed to enjoy it. Whereas video game fantasy series, Elder Scrolls, Witcher, and many different ones over the years, a map is so much less a barrier to entry when it involves interactivity and actually navigating and memorizing the things as they occur. And things like a half a page of purple prose verbose buildup of a fire spell. Suddenly when it's press X to fire, it becomes way more engaging. So I think video games, I owe a lot to opening my mind to experiencing fantasy a little bit more.
I can get behind that because I also think that goes back to your map because in the video game, the map will be revealed slowly. You have to unlock it. You're not placed with a whole map.
Yeah.
And I think I recall you saying this one time to me, but correct me if I'm wrong. A thing you used to not like about fantasy was that kind of magic can just happen.
Sure.
It's just like there's no rules. Anyone can do a sex machina, some magic into a thing. But that makes sense for what you say about video games because magic can't just happen. You got mana bars and you got spell slots and
there is a codified set of rules that
Yeah.
have to exist in order for the game to work.
Yeah, where maybe if you're watching or reading Lord of the Rings and Gandalf shot some light out of his staff, you're like, can he do that anytime? Why don't we do that more often?
Why weren't we spamming lightning staff?
Why isn't he always breakdance fighting with somebody? What is going on? Why just the one time?
Why just the one time?
Does he have telekinetic powers?
We're all asking why.
Everyone
just the one time.
wants to know.
But Diana, walk me through like your first experience with this. Like were you entrenched in the novels when this film first came out?
Was I? I'm really unsure, to be totally honest. I had definitely read The Hobbit already.
Okay.
I know I had read The Hobbit already. And I think I owned the books, and I have two aunts who are super nerds who had already read them and loved them. And I think I owned the books and hadn't gotten to them yet. And I think I cracked them open when I saw the first poster for the first movie. Because I'm one of those nerds who's like, I gotta know everything from the book before I see the movie. Of course I am. So I'm pretty sure I shotgunned them because this was high school back when I could shotgun 3 books in like a month. I can't do that anymore. My brain says no. So yeah, I think I shotgunned them before I saw the movie so I could like fully understand it. So I was kind of just like 3 months of being very deeply entrenched of like read 3 books, probably reread The Hobbit, and then I saw Fellowship 7 times in theaters.
Wow.
I recall being very proud of the fact that I paid 7 times to see Fellowship of the Ring.
And I would say that is a mild to normal number for a lover of Lord of the Rings. Like that was
the standard. Like I knew people who saw it more.
Yeah, I would say that if anything, that was like the average of people I knew who were into Lord of the Rings.
And I think you only saw it the one time?
I saw it once and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. I respect you.
That was it?
I respect you. Yeah, you did a lot of things well. And like there's some stuff that even for me who has grown to appreciate this more over the years, but it didn't necessarily hit me in all the spots that lovers do, is that there's stuff in here that is truly flawless. Like the score and the soundtrack alone, it is legendary just how absolutely perfect in every single moment, every piece of music is. It is wildly moving. It is a perfect example, and I mean textbook example of having themes for each location or event and blending them together and mixing them together as certain things will occur. I think it's just absolutely brilliantly scored from top to bottom, but that is not a controversial opinion of any kind.
No, I mean, I think no compliment about the movie will be a controversial opinion of any kind. Because I will definitely agree with that because this is one of the few movies where Diana notices music. I can tell you when the music shifts because it is so clearly delineated of like, this is the Rivendell music, this is the Shire music, this is the Fellowship music for this specific group of people. And it's so clear cut and every piece of music is so beautiful. It's
clear cut, but then also like blends itself really well where it's
all
like,
part of the same world.
Here's the Fellowship music, but now here's a moment where it's just the hobbits kind of like stuck on their own for a second and we've blended the Hobbiton theme with the like with the Fellowship theme and kind of like weaving in and out and just creating this beautiful tapestry. Gorgeous. Absolute and moving too. Like it's one of those things where obviously these rolling landscapes and beautiful shots that they have are visually gorgeous, but without the context of even a story. Just these visuals of the hillsides, of the mountaintops with these pieces of music are moving enough to bring a human being to tears. And I have nothing but love and respect for that. I think it's phenomenal.
It's really, really good. I think actually one of my favorite moments, though, is the removal of music. And this is one of my absolute favorite moments in the whole thing. It's the Council of Elrond, and the music's swelling. Gimli's just tried to destroy the ring with an axe, and it hasn't worked. And Elrond is like, we cannot destroy the ring with any weapon here possessed. You must go to Mount Doom and throw it in, and one of you must do this. And the music just cuts to silence because none of them want to go to Mount Doom.
Record scratch.
Absolute record scratch. Just like the biggest energy drop of all time, Elrond. You lost the room. And the music, like, so rarely is comedic or effects in that way that it's so much more effective to be like, and then the big swelling music just cut the fuck out.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Hard stop. That is a really good observation. I didn't even really piece together how quiet it was.
You could hear a pin drop. It's amazing that the hobbits that are like spying weren't just found via breathing sounds.
And I think I think that this is a film where they don't have a theme music for quiet failure. Not really a big thing that they want to draw attention to throughout these series. The theme is not any kind of is not nihilism. At no point is it quietly giving up. That's not something that they developed a theme for that would be recurring throughout the film.
Mm-hmm,
yeah, they all have great difficulties, but never quiet abandonment.
Wah, wah.
Yeah.
They don't have like burp. No one wants to go to Mount Doom. Burp.
Yeah. So there is that, but yeah, I love the look of this movie as well. It obviously is, no stretch to say that groundbreaking in terms of CGI, in terms of cinematography, in terms of how they accomplished a lot of the things that they accomplished, and then on top of being a technological feat, because there's lots of movies that are technological feats that do not serve the story in any way. In our intro, we brought up Avatar. Technological feats that no one gives a single fuck about in any way. Whereas this is all technological feats that serve the function and purpose of story, and I love that.
Yeah, every technological feat is made with absolute love for the story, which I think, I would say they, lose later in the Hobbit movies, which is a reason that those ones fail really hard. The absolute work they put in, just in perspective work. So many times watching this movie, I will absolutely forget that the guys playing the hobbits are the exact same height as the humans and Gandalf. So much, and sometimes they're CG'd, obviously, but so much of it is just doubles and perspective work. The fact that Gandalf is in almost every Hobbiton scene, and they've just made these shifting rooms that move with the camera to keep the perspective so that Gandalf looks way bigger than Elijah would, is absolutely crazy because they're such simple scenes. And you could just they're sitting talking at a table. And you could so easily CG it, which they do in the Hobbit movies, because they're like, we're just going to CG Gandalf in. He's way bigger. It's going to be easier.
And we don't have the time to create these. Yeah.
But in this movie, just to let them be we're going to let you act together in the scene and we'll work around you to make the perspectives work.
Yeah.
Is so huge for just the acting, for the emotions coming across.
And I think when I bring up technological achievements, I'm talking about the CGI of the armies and things like that they created. But yes, the practical, which I guess still is technical, it's mechanical achievements.
I mean, it's hugely an achievement.
It frankly makes me nervous and sick to my stomach when I try to think about the math that was required to do the shifting of perspective. Because when it comes to forced perspective, I understand it in a picture. In a locked down frame, if you put the camera on a tripod and you were like, yeah, we put a big chair closer to the camera and a little chair a little further away, and it fucks the perspective. And I'm like, okay, I understand how you force that perspective.
We made the room a little bit shorter on this end, so he looks shorter.
Yeah,
Or he looks taller.
Absolutely. So just things like that. The room gets shorter towards the front of the camera, so we can have Bilbo in the background, and he looks like he's tiny in a big hallway. I'm like, I get it. The camera's on a tripod. It's a single image, and I know how you did this. But when it gets into the shots where it's like, and the table was technically 9 tables that are all being moved by mechanical arms, and each tile on the floor was individually calculated in shifts as they walk down the hallway. I'm like, the pure mathematics of calculating that makes me sincerely, and not a joke, nauseous. I get nauseous when I think about the calculations that had to be made in order to do a moving, shifting perspective.
And the calculations that were made, but just like in watching the behind the scenes, they were made and they were not pushed upon the actors to take care of. It was not like you have to walk on this exact spot or like it won't work. It very much was like, just sit here and things are going to move around you. Mm-hmm. Like, we're going to do a long dolly shot of you and Gandalf at this table. Just keep acting. Don't worry about it. The table's going to move, but just keep acting.
And then I think like that practical interaction allows sincere, real moments to occur. You know, whether it's the flub of Ian McKellen bonking his head.
Oh, he gets a good bonk.
And he gets a good bonk, and that, you know, that was not scripted or intended, but that stays in. And there is just a tactile feel of really being in these environments that works so beautifully in this movie.
Yeah, I would actually say one of my favorite things is like, aside from the perspective work, I know we already said like the places look beautiful, but the incredible scale of every location, but also like every location is very different and very detailed and very specific, but they all feel lived in kind of like a Star Wars-esque way. Like nothing is just like beautiful and you never believe anyone actually lives in there. Like you go to Hobbiton and like you go into like Bag End or you go to anywhere and there's like it's dirty, it's a little cracked, there's papers everywhere, there's food on tables. Like every location is like, no, this is a lived-in area.
Yeah, and I think practical sets are what sell that as well. Because like a digital Hobbiton would be like, okay, so now we go in, we have a digital asset of a sunflower. And now this flower bed has a sunflower multiplied by 20, each of them 15 centimeters apart. And it would have this robotic perfection if you don't go in and do that handmade detail. But even everything like the little flower beds sitting in the window where it's like some of the flowers are clumped too close together. Like I can feel and see someone planted that, someone lived that. The flame that flickers across these props and these moments, it all feels truly real. And also the most porously dirt close-ups of hands that any film has ever had. No one in this movie has clean hands. And it's a detail that like, I don't know, it feels real. It might be overused, but that granularity of the dirt in each hand.
There is a shot at the end of this movie when Aragorn is holding Boromir while he dies. Mm-hmm. And he has the grossest hands you've ever seen. They're covered in orc blood. I think his like fingertips are like bloodied from like, you know, when you like hit your hand in the door or whatever, you get those black fingertips. Yeah. He has black fingertips. They're the grossest hands you've ever seen. And it's like the sexiest thing in the world somehow. I can't even explain to you why, because like in general, Aragorn is like messy hot.
Oh
like,
yeah. Sexy as hell.
So sexy. We'll get into it. But that hand thing that one shot in particular, like haunts me. Of like, what a fucking man. His hands are so dirty. And I can't think of another dirty hand that's ever done anything for me in my entire life.
Yeah, that's fair.
So yeah, the dirty hands and the really short nails. What was the manicurist on set doing to these boys?
I would like to know who these hands are because, yeah, the almost non-existent nail that they would get, I'm like, wow, I'm a little bit worried about how short that nail is, but
really down there.
Yeah, really, really down there.
But still dirty.
Still dirty, yeah. It not clipped off nails. It feels like a bunch of snapped off nails from digging in the dirt, kind of a thing, was what they all had.
Yeah. But
so
Viggo.
Yeah, but I'm with you. There is a level of of Star Wars kind of original Star Wars grit that's a little bit caked into every wall and prop, and it feels
things still feel magical and fantastical. But I'm like, oh, but they also feel real, even when they're CG'd.
Yes,
incredible balance.
Even a magical cape given to you by the elves, it's like that's a slightly nicer fabric than the fabrics you have, but it is still a fabric that it looks a little scratchy. It's still it seems like something the elves wouldn't wear, but would give to people who aren't elves.
Yeah. It feels like every other movie would be it's a very shiny fabric, and you disappear when you walk with it, and it swishes. And there's no, it's still warm. It's just a cotton fiber, but it's gonna hide you a little better.
Yeah,
it's real. It's a real cloak.
It looks like a World War II, just kind of green army issue wool blanket,
which is very probably purposeful. This is there's a lot of World War II allegories in this from J.R.R. Tolkien. So
Absolutely.
I love that observation. Where should we go? Oh my goodness. We've barely touched upon the Lord of the Rings. The achievements have been discussed, but I don't know. I've discussed this movie so many times with so many people, and I love it so much. I sincerely don't know where I want to go. I'm lost in the sauce of joy.
You are. Well, let's talk about. Why don't we jump over to something we just kind of glanced upon a moment ago, which is the sexiness of it all. So let's go on the journey of sexiness. Diana, take me on a walk. Take me through a story.
It really is a journey. I feel like my journey is very similar to yours of liking fantasy and maturing with it as you grow, because definitely teenage Diana was so into Legolas. So embarrassingly into Legolas. I had so many posters. I had magazines that he was on the cover on, that Orlando Bloom was. Saw Pirates way more than I should have, because he crossed over, and it wasn't nearly as good. He wasn't Legolas in that. For the record, he was not Legolas in Pirates of the Caribbean.
That's correct. He was not. He was not.
And
you were into Orly, as you call him.
I do call him Orly.
Orly. To the point where at one point I thought you had actually written in a question to the podcast My Brother and Me.
I remember
the advice show, because we had moved in together, and we'd been living together for a little while, and I was listening to an episode of My Brother and Me, and one of the questions was, I had just moved in with my boyfriend. What he doesn't know is that there's a bunch. I used to have a hardcore Orly stage, and there's a bunch of Orlando Bloom posters under our bed, and I don't know how to get rid of them or what to do with him without him knowing. And I'm like, oh my, and I literally went and checked under our bed to be like, did Diana write this question in? Because it had strong you energy.
I think I got rid of them only before we moved in together. I had them in my old place before we moved in. And when you accused me of that, I'm like, no, but definitely could have been. Also, I'd just thrown them out the window that time. They sent me the answer early, and they told me to just chuck it out the window.
No, that wasn't me. Diana, what are you doing in the bathroom? Nothing. Why do I smell smoke? No!
But yeah, so I was very into Orly. Not really anyone else. As cute as the hobbits are, wasn't super into them. Aragorn, I was I could acknowledge that this looked good, but I was too young to be like, yeah. Now, as an adult woman, when I watch Lord of the Rings, it does feel very weird to remember being into Legolas and seeing Aragorn just fucking take that hood off and shake his head, and we didn't get to Two Towers, but the scene where he double opens the doors is, woo! Getting a little sweaty. getting a little sweaty over here.
You grow into Aragorn.
You grow into Aragorn, and it feels better. It feels more realistic. I don't know. Maybe because he's playing a human and Legolas is playing an elf.
Sure. And maybe because he has just a human character arc. He has an actual character arc as opposed to just a dick walking on snow.
He's not a dick. He can't fall through snow. Sorry. What, should he just walk behind them?
He's a dick. Let's be real.
He can scout ahead easily via walking on snow.
Sure. But I do recall being frustrated and almost feeling gaslit at the time that this movie came out, because I always thought Aragorn was the hot one.
You were right. And they're both hot in their own way. Aragorn's hot and Legolas is cute.
But I've always been Legolas is nothing to me. But at the time this came out, I'm in high school, and everyone's like, Orly, and I remember leaving the movie theater, and I'm like, I can't even remember Orlando Bloom in this film. Are we not all fully hot for Aragorn right now? Like, you would have to, like, I'm like, we don't have smartphones, but someone would have to look up and show me a photo of who Orlando Bloom is for me to remember who he was in this movie.
Even that wouldn't help. I mean, he's a brunette guy who'd shaved his head at the time, so
sure,
probably would have been quite different. No, I do remember, just because, as I said, my two aunts were really nerdy, and we went to, like, see, whenever we would see these movies together, like, they were obviously into Aragorn, because they were of the age of Aragorn, but they never, like, they never minded that I was into Orlando, and they didn't, like, tell me not to be, but, like, I could see them during the Aragorn scenes, and I was like, oh yeah, they get it.
They were of the age of Aragorn is the most fantastical sentence, though. I practically, that sentence makes a lot of sense, but it has such a fantasy feel to it. To be like, then during the 5th age of Aragorn,
you realize the hands aren't gross. It's very sexy.
It's hot as hell, and he's the fucking coolest dude.
He is the coolest dude. Actually, I love, because as you said, he has a character arc, and he's basically the only one, maybe Frodo, but everyone else is kind of just along for the journey.
Sure.
And I love Aragorn's arc for so many reasons. Well,
I was just going to quickly say, I think Boromir has a short micro arc, and that arc being, I'm a selfish idiot, I'm dying. Oh, my bad, death. So, like, the arc really moves a lot of the needle those 30 seconds before death. But I do think there is a small arc for Boromir within here.
I've always had trouble finding Boromir's arc, because I kind of think he doesn't have one in a nice way, because I get Boromir from the start. Because his Gondor has been at war. Gondor is right next to Mordor. So they've been at war for years. They've been dying and then, like, fighting Mordor when no one else has. So everything that's kind of a character flaw with Boromir, I know comes from desperation about trying to save his people. So I actually don't really find he goes anywhere, because at the end he's like, Aragorn, will you go save my people? That's all I've been trying to do, when the ring did use that to corrupt me and make me a jerk for a minute there. But sincerely, he does just want to protect Gondor from day one. He's
of a singular focus, which maybe loses the big picture a little bit, but a very reasonable singular focus.
Yeah,
if not corrupted by the ring, a reasonable singular focus.
Yeah. The ring will fuck you up.
Yeah. But owning into being fucked up by the ring as well, I think, is like a nice last little moment for him.
Yeah, and Aragorn's is much better. I mean, Aragorn's kind of spans all 3 movies, where he has to embrace his human side because he does not want to, because Aragorn believes what everyone in this movie believes, and it makes me laugh so hard, is that men fucking suck, is the thesis statement of Fellowship of the Ring. And they say it so many times. For 3 hours, they're just like, what are these lines? The hearts of men are easily corrupted. The hearts of men who above all else desire power. Aragorn says, the same blood runs in my veins, the same weakness. Elrond looks at the camera and says, men are weak. This whole movie is just like, men fucking suck. And Aragorn has to learn to love being a human.
You're right. I think that you are empirically right. I do also think that one of the themes of this movie is everyone sucks. Like, I think that a lot of the times it is elves don't suck. And we'll get into that later. I very evidence-based think that elves suck maybe the most. I hate every fucking... fuck these people. But I'm mad at elves. But they're also like dwarves, greedy little bitches, and they're holes, and they're digging down, and they dug too deep. And I'm like, what is that your right to say, elves? You made a fucking big old tree house. So, like, at what point someone could be like, your tree house is too big, it's an affront to God. But, like, you've really taken a hard stance to be like, tunnels shouldn't go that deep. I'm like, why is it your fucking right to shit on dwarves like that?
No treehouse has ever unearthed an eternal demon. to my knowledge.
But that is only because they're dicks about their information. Where it's like, oh yes, dug too deep. Of course the dwarves did. No, sorry. It's like, of course the dwarves dug too deep. Don't you know how deep it is? They should dig. Of course there's a bog moth down there. It's like, well, tell them. Share your information. Don't be asshole. Elves want to be right more than they want to actually do anything right.
You're shitting on elves, and you have a right to. I will point out it's the two wizards who know about the Balrog. It is Gandalf and Saruman, who have elf-like qualities and are really good bros with the elves. They're elf adjacent, but they're a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
So the elves...
They're an elf who learned to party, basically, is what wizards are.
They're what wizards are.
Yeah.
But Aragorn does go through... what I love about Aragorn is that his strength is that he understands men are weak. He is able to let Frodo go because he knows the ring will corrupt him eventually, where so few people would be willing to admit they could be corrupted by the ring. Boromir would never have admitted the ring can corrupt him. But Aragorn is standing there and the ring is talking to him and he's like, yeah, this bitch is going to get me. I got to let Frodo go.
And I think
that's a cool way to be strong.
And I think too that is definitely a recurring theme throughout this as well, in the relationship of Sam and Frodo, and like admitting what your needs are, what your strengths and weaknesses, and what you need to compensate for what it is that you might be lacking or what you need as a support system is something that Aragorn does in a very traditionally masculine, like, I need this to stab better. And Frodo and Sam can be very much like, I need my friend so I don't cry tonight. I saw a big spider. So it's more emotional, but I do think that there is definitely a recurring through more than Aragorn here, this idea that admitting your faults is actually what provides you more strength.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Galadriel also does that. She passes the test, remains Galadriel. She will diminish.
Yeah, that is fair.
She freaks out.
Yeah, but you were talking about how men are the weakest of the species. They dunk on men pretty hard.
I actually think the movie can't decide. I don't know about the book. I can't remember how it feels about it. The movie honestly can't decide how it feels about men, because I will say Peter Jackson loves elves. Peter Jackson is the opposite of you. He adds more elves to each movie that he can, elves that aren't parts of the story. He's like, just throw some more elves in there. Everyone wants elves. And he's right about Diana wanting more elves. Not even just Legolas. Like, I like all the elves. I love elves. I think they're fun. What was my thesis statement I was getting to? I got off track about elves.
About how much you like elves, but men are trash.
But men are trash. But the movie and the whole trilogy is like, Gandalf is like, we have to trust in men to save the world. But then the movie just keeps saying men suck. Like, Boromir gets corrupted by the ring. Aragorn doesn't really want to be a human. He was raised by elves. He thinks elves are better, basically. He thinks men are weak. There's more lines in the extended version about it. He's like, I'm not taking the ring to Gondor. You guys will just use it. Like, he won't let any of them do it. So it does feel like the movie only through Aragorn embraces that men aren't shitty, because pretty much every other man except for maybe Faramir later really sucks.
And I think that sometimes when they have a redeeming remark about humanity, about man, I feel like sometimes they just forget to use the word hobbit. You know what? I feel like sometimes hobbit and human are getting lumped in together, where it will be Gandalf being like, we have to trust man, and he'll look at Frodo and he'll be like, hobbits are the best of us. And I'm like, but did you mean man or hobbits? And I'm like, I know that we're very similar, and I know I'm splitting hairs here, but everyone seems to hate man, and everyone seems to be pretty net neutral on hobbits.
Oh, hobbits and man are very, very different.
Yeah.
Hobbits are the utopia. They are the ideal. Like, they live in a society with no corruption, but full of joy and innocence and perfection. Like, they are the kings of the world. But
sometimes other species will say man and then look at a hobbit, and I'm like, okay, but what are we trying to say here? It muddies some of the ideas and perspectives of humanity as to the way they interchange it, and then we'll cut to a hobbit.
Yeah, I can get behind that. They're not quite sure. They're like, it's like a tiny man, right?
Yeah.
They're called halflings. What are they half of? They're half of a man.
They're half of a man, twice the foot.
Twice the foot, half the man.
Twice the foot, half the man.
Lots of hair.
More heart.
Oh, so much more heart. Yeah, they're emotionally support hobbits.
Yeah. They are emotionally support.
Yeah,
hobbits.
The rest of the fellowship is your physical support, and the hobbits are your emotional support hobbits.
I really got to give a lot of love and credit to Elijah Wood in this as well, which is something that, like, I didn't really think much of at the time. Like, I'm just like, okay, he's just kind of a face that's there, and all of the heavy-hitting actors are acting around him, you know, because there are heavy-hitting actors in this movie. You know, when you have Cate Blanchett and Ian McKellen doing scenes with you, it's hard to stand out. But really, like, a lot of respect for a quiet, powerful performance that he gives throughout this. The amount of times that he has to openly weep with no facial expression,
that's
and
a great
in a
point.
way that I think is a sincere performance. Like, I think he's actually truly crying on set, whether he's using some kind of an aid or to accomplish it, I'm not sure. But a dead-faced stoicism of a complete breakdown, and it really is a lot to convey, and he does it well, and I think it's not the showiest performance, but it does everything that it needs to do, which is a surprisingly large amount.
That is a great point about crying without like doing like a Dawson's Creek like ugly face. Yeah, because when the money shot is when he turns around after Gandalf dies. And he's already kind of started walking away because he's like just so numb about it. And Aragorn's like, yeah, where are you going? And he just turns around and he's devastated and you can see it. But he's also, you're right, he's also completely dead. But it's like there's tears going down his face. And it's an impossible performance to give. And it's really, really good. And yeah, Frodo is actually someone I've also matured with, I think, because Frodo was always neutral for me, I think, when I used to watch this, to be like, yeah, Frodo's here, he's going to destroy the ring. Him and Sam are great together. And over the years, Frodo's story has become so tragic to me in a way I didn't analyze as a younger person. Just like when halfway through this movie, he's ready to go home. Like when he gets to Rivendell, he's like, I've been stabbed by a ring wraith. I went on my adventure, like my Uncle Bilbo did before me. I'm ready to go. And then that moment at the Council of Elrond when he says, I will take it. And again, the music drops out. And the look on Gandalf's face, which Peter Jackson told him you have to look like your son just drafted into the war. And that's absolutely what just happened. Mm-hmm. And this whole performance and this whole tragedy of Frodo of being like, I will give up my innocence and my purity to save the world from this ring, and I will choose to do it over and over again. It breaks my heart more the older and older I get as I watch these movies.
Yeah, that understanding of I've gone as far as I can go, and now I have to go a little bit farther is really gut-wrenching.
Yeah, when he's sitting in that council and he's like, none of these people can do it. And it's a little arrogant in a way when you really think about it, to be like, none of these people can hold the ring. And he's like, I'll have to take it again.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, you should take it. He's right. Everybody, he should take it.
And seeing their corrupted reflections within the ring is a very complicated thing. Although, I would argue that if I'm looking at the One Ring, the thing known to corrupt people's minds to make you think that you're the only one good enough for it. And within the reflection of that ring, I see a reflection that tells me a story that everyone else is corrupted, that I'm the one who I would make me question my own decision making.
Oh, I didn't take the reflection to mean everyone's corrupted, because the reflection shows them, but then it ignites in flame. So I took it to mean it would destroy them, which I don't necessarily means corrupt to me. I think it would when I think about what the specifics of what that would be by how the ring works.
Whether it be corruption or death, if the ring told you you're the special one who needs to take me, no one else is good enough, I feel like that's what it's telling all of these other people in this moment as well. I think that I see what you're saying about it showing their destruction. I think it's also showing that they're currently being corrupted, which is why they're arguing about this moment as well, is that I actually don't believe that this argument, as they encircle the ring, is the sincere argument that would occur in a vacuum away from the ring.
With no ring.
I do realize that tension between the races are high, but I don't think they're as high as they were in that scene, and I think that everyone's mind is being corrupted to think that they're the special one who should do it, and that everyone else is too incompatible. And I think that it is affecting them in that scene, is my interpretation of it.
No, there's so many ways you can interpret it. Yeah, they're definitely like emotions are charged, and maybe Frodo is even just seeing like, I'm the only one not emotionally charged by this. Maybe the ring has stopped reaching out to him. He's given up the ring. It's on a platform.
Fair.
He's not taking it anymore.
Now,
Speaking of the ring.
Speaking of the ring, because one thing that I always do with fantasy is, and just as a light goof, just a gentle goof, is that I enjoy trying to solve problems with modern thinking and occasionally science. And this is a movie where I did that. I did that, and apparently it sparked a conversation.
For a man who doesn't, not like dislike Lord of the Rings, but doesn't love it, we have discussed Lord of the Rings in this house so much as you try to solve the problems of Lord of the Rings. I'm going to read you guys a Tumblr post I made, I think about a year and a half ago. So my boyfriend doesn't know a lot about Lord of the Rings and was asking why it was so hard to destroy the ring. And I said it corrupted the ring bearers and made them evil. And even proximity to the ring can turn you evil, as it did briefly with Boromir. And after some careful thought, he decided that the 9 members of the Fellowship should each have a super long string attached to the ring, and they could drag it behind them from really far away so it won't affect them. And Legolas could just keep an eye on it to make sure it's okay back there. And that might work? Did he solve it? I'm so mad. 28,000 notes on Tumblr. People are furious about this.
Tumblr seemed to get very passionate about my ideas.
How hard it is to get 28,000 notes on Tumblr, a dead social media format?
I'm told it's difficult.
It's not easy.
So I have many thoughts. One is that I understand it corrupts the ring bearer, but I'm like, clearly it is, to use a video game term, an area of effect attack. That the level of proximity multiplies the speed of the corruption. That yes, it can call to you anywhere across Middle-earth and, corrupt your mind, but the speed at which it corrupts you does depend on its proximity, whether it is in your pocket, in your city, your countryside. The proximity affects how fast it corrupts you.
It does also, if you are the sole ring bearer, it is also much more, which is proximity, but also the ring knows who currently owns it.
So I say a series of strings. They are all dragging it behind. Maybe you can get some kind of a spell so that it floats, so it doesn't.
Oh, I remember the floating idea.
Because you want it
good.
Off the ground, so it doesn't snag or get tangled or whatever. There's got to be a way to ensorcel it or the string. You have Legolas come up the rear, who has the elvish eagle vision, who can see super far, and he can keep a good eye on the ring.
I love that Legolas is just like a dad. He's like, I got my eye on it. It's fine.
I got it.
It's up in the air.
So I think it's an area of effect attack. The corruption has a thing on it. Also, even though you can't necessarily destroy it without Mount Doom, you could still put it inside an iron ingot or another block of metal that would prevent you from putting your finger into it in a moment of temptation.
It is really possible to stop it from being a ring.
You can remove your own temptation at any given moment. So I think that there are other, more practical approach, logical solutions to getting it to the place that it needs to be.
I mean, you've touched on a fun one. 9 strings is a lot, but I like the idea of we'll each take a ninth of the damage.
Yes.
We'll separate the
Spread
damage
out the
amongst
damage.
us.
Spread out the psychic damage.
And it'll be lower because we're far away. Mm-hmm. That's a very good one. I mean, I won't get into it, but long argued is why don't the eagles just take you to Mount Doom and you can drop it in from above?
Sure.
Very similar to just flying. I've never heard a great answer why not. I've heard some
and even if it
okay ones.
And even if it could potentially corrupt the eagles per se.
It would only be an hour flight.
It would be a short flight, and you could have the eagle carry a hobbit who's holding the ring. You could create a level of distance that way. Also, they have siege weapons. You load it up in a trebuchet or a catapult. You launch that bad boy.
Ooh, no, that's too risky. You miss Mount Doom, you've just delivered the ring to Sauron.
Fair enough.
No,
okay.
I'm gonna say no to trebuchet.
Okay, all right.
I did love your sacrifice play idea, which you had off microphone, which was I think you had several different ones, which was Instead of Frodo just carrying the ring, every hobbit should get it for like an hour a day to like spread out the sight, because they're the only ones who can handle it because they're so pure and little, and will like equally damage 4 hobbits instead of super damaging 1 hobbit. What's your description?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you all have a certain level of psychic damage you can take, and it busted Bilbo, but only over a very long and only over a very long period of time. And yeah, all of you just trade off. 4 of you are equally pure to fight the corruption, it would seem.
I liked that one, and then I think my other favorite one you had was tie the hobbit up. Because Frodo is knocked unconscious several times throughout this trilogy, and he's just carried around while holding the ring.
Yeah.
No power of effect when you're unconscious.
But it still seems to have latched onto you as the primary caretaker.
Yeah, so he would still be getting psychic damage, but you tie him up and you just kind of carry him everywhere, and then he's good to go.
Yeah, a knocked out Gollum.
Very small.
Tied up Gollum. Wildly frail, a little bit wily, but obviously capturable. We've seen it happen. You tie up that dude, you just tape the friggin' ring to his chest.
Tape it. We have tape.
We have tape now. Tie the ring around his chest.
It's the third age. Of course we have tape by now.
Gollum can't put it on, and then you just carry Gollum and just yeet him into Mount Doom.
And he'd be so happy. He'd be like, I have my precious. Yes.
So I have some practical approaches for it.
You are so smart. So yeah, there are just so many arguments in the notes about your string idea.
Yeah,
people could not handle it.
Yeah, I think inarguably it has a bigger attack on you the closer that you are to it. So that distance would be a benefit. Whether or not the string is the best way to do it, distance is of a benefit, I think. I'll die on that hill.
All right, that's your hill. I've got a few goofs, and they are just little things that bother me every time I watch them that are so small. And I want to air my grievances with Lord of the Rings briefly, as much as I love this movie. The scene where Gandalf comes to see if the ring is the One Ring, because he goes and looks it up, and he's like, it's going to glow, and there's going to be writing on it if it's the One Ring. He throws it in the fire. He takes it out of the fire with a poker, and he says, put out your hand, Frodo. It's quite cool. You are not sure this is the One Ring.
Oh, and if it's not, it's just going to scald the shit out of his hand.
Burn the shit out of Frodo's hand. Like, you are hoping it's not the One Ring.
Yeah.
Your hope is that this is just a normal or way less magical ring. It might be seething hot right now.
In which case it would burn his hand. Yeah. It was only in there briefly, so it would be a light burn. He'd be like,
still a little hot.
Yeah, you would burn your friend. You would burn your friend. That's a really good point.
It's always bothered me. I've always been so mad at Gandalf for being so sure that wasn't going to burn his hand. Like, I want an outtake where, like, it wasn't the One Ring. He's like, oh, shit, sorry, I'll heal that somehow, maybe.
Sorry about that.
Get you some aloe vera.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
So that's always bothered me for about 20 years.
Wow.
It's been nagging me.
Yeah, because if he was right and they weren't going to go on an adventure, he just burns his friend. Yeah, so that is a tough one. Okay.
So that's one. My next one. Samwise walking with Frodo. They have this nice moment. They've just left the Shire, and they're in this like cornfield, and Sam is like, one more step, and it's the furthest away from home I've ever been. It's like,
beautiful moment.
Beautiful moment. We're going to be in this together. It's furthest away from home. Like a day later, they run into Merry and Pippin. Like, so just on your day off, you go farther than Sam's ever been in the Shire?
Oh, that doesn't bother me at all.
That doesn't bother you at all?
Because Merry and Pippin are scamps. They're out there full on scamping.
They are scamps.
They are, like, because Sam is pure. Like, Sam is like, I'm going to go for a nice long walk. This is far enough, is the impression I've always gotten from Sam.
He's a bit of a homebody.
Where he's like, I'm going to listen in on your conversation because, like, I'll never tell. I'm a little bad sometimes. And Merry and Pippin are out there straight up thieving. Straight up thieving. They've got an arm full of goods.
As much as they can carry.
They're like, we've done crimes. For as much as it's like Hobbiton is pure and hobbits are pure, and I know that they're just scamping, but I'm like, you're out there, you are scamping way harder than Sam. So I buy into that, where I'm like, you are on the outskirts looking in to come in and steal some cabbages, whereas Sam just went for a long walk a couple times and is like, oh, it's the Scarecrow. It's time to turn back.
They're trying to get to places where people don't recognize them so they can steal more stuff.
Exactly. They want to be so far on the outskirts that when Sam goes on a long walk, they are looking in at Sam and they're like, Sam's going back. And now let's go in and steal some stuff.
I guess I hadn't really figured out that the first 2 times we meet Merry and Pippin, they are thieving because they also steal the fireworks.
Straight up thieving. Yeah.
So just always be thieving. They steal very little from that point on. But
which is wild because from that point on, they meet people who you could rightfully steal from.
Oh, who it would be great to
Goblins
just
and
rob.
orcs and Uruk-hai. Like, you can just rob an axe or whatever you might need.
Take some magic elements from people.
Take it up.
Yeah,
Take it up.
they do not steal after
So
that point.
I was with you on the first one. I'm defending this one, though. They're scamps.
I love this.
They're little scamps.
This, you know what? I love to have a flaw from Lord of the Rings removed.
Oh, nice, nice.
Withdrawn.
I will say that Sam moment too. There's just some beautiful moments in this movie, just like real clean scenes like that. This is the farthest I've ever been seen. It's beautiful writing. It's a clean moment, and it's just a really good look. Like they created this beautiful edge of town moment and a place that, while without having like a big landmark, would be a noteworthy location for Sam to remember how far he's gone, where it's like, this is where the Scarecrow is and the crops change. And just like that little detail to be like, this isn't just something he says into the ether while in a random field. We've really nailed the visual of a borderline in a world without traditional marked borderlines of like him knowing.
He didn't get to a fork in the road and he was like, I've stopped at the fork before because like why would you go to a fork and just turn around? But he's like, no, I had a picnic maybe in this field once and I've never gone further than that. That is a nice point. That's a lovely choice of location.
Yeah.
Not that this movie makes kind of any bad choices in location.
It's all pretty flawless.
Or shot choice. It's all beautiful. I feel like this is the first time I've watched the movie and realized how many insert shots there are. Just like it's a face, it's 3 shots of the ring and its hand. It's a face, it's 3 shots of the ring. It's so much extra work by the B unit.
Yeah,
of shots of hands.
like close-ups of hands holding the ring or whatever.
Or whatever you're holding. Aragorn's like touching his sword because he's gonna kill Boromir because he took the ring.
Now, I will say there are a couple of moments where I can maybe feel Peter Jackson's horror movie style, which is what he had done up until this movie. It was all horror films.
It was all horror.
So I can feel the horror movie styling of Peter Jackson in a few moments, like the fact that as great the cinematography is and as much as there are technological achievements in CGI and a lot of the work that they've done here, the fact that the slow motion shots weren't filmed in slow motion, it has that shitty thing where it's like everything's slow motion. It's a little too blurry and a little janky. Like things feel silly when it goes slow motion for a moment or two.
I don't know what parts are slow motion.
There are a few different moments where like sometimes it's emotional moments. Like I think like when Gandalf falls and it cuts to like Frodo being held back and screaming. And
that's in slow motion.
Screaming and crying in slow motion. But it wasn't filmed in slow motion. So basically like if you want to film in slow motion, so if a movie is 24 frames per second, it's 23.9, I forget, but it's 24 frames a second. But if you want to slow that down, that means you need twice as many frames per second. So you need to know in the planning phase, like when you're like, we're filming this shot today, this will be in the movie in slow motion. So we need to actually film this at 50 or 60 frames per second in order to have it slowed down and then still look like the rest of the film. But a lot of on a budget horror movie filmmaking and stuff like this is we're filming everything at the same frame rate. Some stuff will slow down, some stuff will speed up later, and it's gonna look wonky. And that was done here, and I think that that's kind of weird. There are some points when it works. The speed up, I think it does work, which they do in a few moments where it's like the ring wraiths are coming. And then when it's filmed at an incorrect frame rate and sped up, it feels unnatural, which is a moment where horror director and doing things on a shoestring budget in his past, actually works to his advantage in making a moment unsettling and uncomfortable and doing these weird speed ramps and things aren't quite as natural as they should be. And I'm like, ooh, the ring wraiths are coming. Get them out of here. I don't feel good.
They do give you an eerie, an ooky feeling.
Yeah, but then there was a moment where it's like, look at Frodo cry. And I'm like, he's too blurry. And like, it's just little moments like that where I'm like, oh, you didn't plan to film it. You didn't know you were going to do slow motion when you filmed this at the time. And it hurts it a little bit in those little moments.
Okay. I've never really noticed any of these moments, I won't lie. Now that you say them, I think I can like picture like 3 things that I think were blurry, and I always thought it was just like CG squeezing the hobbits down.
Oh,
Whenever
okay.
I see Frodo being blurry, I assume it's just a CG element.
Gotcha.
And not a slow motion element, because I didn't know the technical things. Like, that makes perfect sense. You would need more frames, of course.
Yeah. You're trying to make a moment last twice as long, so you need twice as much information to fill it out.
You gotta trick our eyes the way you do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so little moments like that, but then there are moments where I think the horror direction works for him, like POV shots and things like that. Like when they're in the dwarven caves, that fight scene, it might be a little too much shaky cam for me, but there is a little bit of horror of the unknown and like, oh no, the goblins are coming, the orcs are coming, like we need to run. The Balrog is coming. That is moments where I'm like, ooh, your horror background is actually really paying off in spades here.
He also has a lot of fun in, where does Saruman live? Oh no, Isengard. Isengard, with the Uruk-hai being born, he made them so gooey. He was like, you gotta throw more goo on those Uruk-hai. They're coming out of the womb, and they're so wet.
They're very wet.
And it makes them scarier somehow, that they're just like unbothered by how wet they are. I've never been that wet and been like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit. I've been wet and I've been like, oh, I'm wet. Give me a towel. And they're just crossing their arms and they're ready to go.
They are ready to go. And I will say, like, kudos to whoever it was who I actually don't have it here in front of me, but whoever the body double or the person in costume who played that lead Uruk-hai was.
Oh yeah, he's got a name and I don't know what it is.
Because
the IMDb is so long for this movie.
Yeah, but he does a phenomenal job to be like, you are in this, your vision's probably poor, you're caked in layers of makeup and prosthetics. You need to be born looking tough and you are gooey. Can you do, like, the embodiment that he brings to this creature is very powerful and very strong, and I think very noteworthy in a movie where it is hard to be noteworthy as much as, like, the next movie, obviously we get more Andy Serkis's Gollum being a very legendary and iconic performance, and we get touches of it here, but to have another physical actor embodying a character of note and to do a great job with it, I think that's very cool.
And with so much prosthetic on, like not just like I found a cool physical character, but also I have so much stuff on me. I'm the meme. Like there's too much shit on me.
Too much fucking shit on me.
But he does it.
Yeah.
There's goo on top of all the prosthetics. It's not just I came out and there was goo on me. It's they put 8 hours of prosthetics on me and then goo.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Oh, the other shot that I wanted to circle back to that I absolutely love is the moment the ring hits the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And it back in Hobbiton, and it just hits the ground dead weight, and it doesn't do any of the physics that a ring does in real life. And it is this small, understated moment of the unnatural world. And I think that really sets a lot of the tone far better than any of the, as necessary as it is, any of the opening dialogue to be like, this was made by Sauron, this is a powerful ring, look out. And a ring dead hitting the earth, not spinning, not bouncing, nothing. I'm like, oh, fuck. That made me worried about this more than any line of dialogue up until that moment in the movie.
It is such a cool idea because in the moment you don't know why you're freaked out because you're like, yeah, he just dropped a ring. Like your mind doesn't go like it should have bounced or like even though in the back of your head you know it should have bounced or it should have rolled away, but you watch it and you're like, oh, something just isn't right about that. And it's such a good example of like the insidious darkness of the ring. Like it's very subtle in the way that it is evil, but it's definitely pure evil. Yeah, I think you said the ground was magnetic. And that's how they made it not
I looked
bounce.
it up from what I saw online. They magnetized the ground in order to get that very uncomfortable, just clang, dead drop. Like it doesn't follow natural physics, or it's also the heaviest, or it's the heaviest object that's ever existed. But Gandalf himself says it's incredibly light.
And
you can
it
barely
won't burn
feel
you
it.
for sure. I've checked.
It definitely won't burn you.
Do you feel like you've said enough about elves? I know you wanted to get that off your chest.
Oh, I wanted to goof on elves. I wasn't sure if you had something else before I goof on elves.
Oh, you're waiting to break out on elves.
You want me to get into it? I'll get into it. I'll dunk on elves. I fucking hate elves, y'all. I am exhausted by elves, and not just Lord of the Rings.
I like that distinction.
In every scenario where there is an elf, elves are the most exhausting characters for me to read, witness, hear. In every regard, I just find them pretentious idiots who tire and bore the shit out of me, and I hate the self-righteousness that they're always written with, this incredulity what they have, where it's like, oh, how could you fuck it up? And it's like, well, where were you, dickhead? None of them help. None of them are. I'm exhausted in every, and the apostrophes and the breathiness and the unnecessary, like, welcome to. I'm like, how many apostrophes were in the name of this place? God damn it. I find elves exhausting and everywhere, and so high and mighty, and like
They are high and mighty. They live in trees and they're immortal and they have magic.
they act high and mighty. All right. The moment that killed me is that I'm like, Galadriel, you're hanging on by a thread. Huh? Like, they are doing worse than man. Because, like, there are points where, like, Boromir is like, give me the ring and I could help my people. Maybe I could be powerful while I do it. No, I've gotta help people. Give me the ring so I can help people. And when Frodo's like, Galadriel, this is the ring. Would you like it? And she was like, you'd worship me. I am the queen. Sorry about that. I don't know how you dirty humans could fuck this up so bad. It's like, you are hanging on by a thread. Like, you are one bad day away from scorching this earth to nothing.
I think that's why they don't help. They're like, we are several thousands of years old. Our empathy is wiped out. Mm-hmm. We will snap.
Right.
We're no good to have around. Legolas is actually, I think, traditionally the youngest elf alive. Which is kind of why he's like sent. They're like, that guy kind of cares still. Get him with this crew. But Galadriel is very kind. You're being unfair to Galadriel specifically. I love elves, so I'm gonna defend every point because she tells Frodo, only you can do this. She doesn't think elves are better. She doesn't think an elf should have the ring. She said, if you can't find a way, no one will. Even the smallest person can change the course of the world. Like, she has these great iconic lines that she's like, you, Frodo, the littlest guy here, not an elf. You can do it. So I will defend Galadriel for that. And I just think...
You got to admit she's hanging on by a thread.
She's going to snap.
She's going to snap.
Frodo offered her the ring because she's very powerful, and he thought kind of the same way he offered it to Gandalf at the very beginning. Like, someone powerful should have this.
Yeah.
And I don't think he regretted offering it to Gandalf. He regretted offering it to Galadriel.
Certainly.
He was like, oh, no. Like, you could see him back away a little, like, Aragorn.
Oops.
I made a mistake.
I need an adult.
I need an
Aragorn is who I need.
I need an age of Aragorn.
I need a man.
Strider.
Yeah, please come and help.
But I love elves. I like that they're ethereal, and they're just like, to me they're just very poetic. They remind me of Shakespeare. They're romantic. I like that they're eternal. They make me feel nice.
I'm elf for you.
Thank
I'm
you for
happy
being
for
elf
you.
for me.
I'm happy for you. I still find them I find their romanticism
I
verbose
love
to
their
the point of
romanticism.
exhausting.
They're all poets. They just love the arts. they like nature. You love nature.
I do.
I think you and elves would get along. You would be like, "How'd you build this treehouse?" And they could like show you. Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, "Great."
I'd be like, "How'd you
skills."
build this treehouse?" And they'd be like, "Over the course of 300 years, we blew whispers into each other's mouth. And as we read the poems of the older ones, we at one point coughed on a fire. The gentlest cough, gentler than you dirty men and your ugly coughs, so guttural. And it's just like it feels
like,
so pretentious and hateful the way that they say everything.
I feel like they would say that to you if you asked them how you built it, and then Aragorn would walk over and be like, "There's just some like wood over there if you want."
Just like some nice wood.
I can show you how they did it.
It is some nice wood.
There was no whispers involved. It was not whisper based.
They feel passive aggressive even when they're kind. I agree with you. I do agree with you. Galadriel does say some kind things. But even when they're kind, even when they're like, "It's you, Frodo. You have to be the one in order to do it. You, the littlest one." And I'm like, you didn't need to bring it up. And like, there's an undertone of like, "You, the shitty little piece of shit. Even you, garbage man, showing up wearing your garbage pail. Not as beautiful as us. Never glowed once in your life. Don't even emit light. Frankly, trash. Even you could have an effect on the world." Be like, don't even you? I find everything they say passive aggressive in a way that really frustrates me.
I think that's a nice thing to say to someone who doesn't think they're worthy of the ring, because he's just offered it to her.
Sure.
Because he doesn't think that he can change the world.
Sure.
And she's like, even the smallest person can change the world. And you don't normally say that to someone who's physically small.
Yeah.
It's normally a thing you say to say, like, maybe a poor person who has no power.
Yeah. And
so I get where you're coming from.
And I also think directly addressing someone's personal insecurities is something you do as a long-term friend. As a long-term friend. When your friend is being self-deprecating and it's like, okay, I get it. You're not a great runner, but I think you could still run a marathon. But you wouldn't walk up to a stranger you met that day and be like, "You bad running idiot, do something."
Did you know even people with short legs can run a marathon?
Yeah, you don't.
Even those people.
Yeah, you need to have a close personal relationship to directly address someone's personal insecurities like that, I think.
All right, I accept your hatred of elves. I feel like I'm going to, in my heart, say it's not most of these elves, and it's other elves.
I think the embodiment, the perfect epitome of the way I dislike elves, for any of you who are fans of Dimension 20, the D&D podcast, if you just look up, and there's a clip on YouTube, and it's from the season called Fantasy High, and it's Fantasy High dunking on elves, and it's a 20-minute clip of every moment where the DM, the GM Brendan Lee Mulligan does the elf voice and is just making fun of how elves are and everything. That is exactly how I always feel about elves. So I'll bookend it with that. Go look up that clip if you feel anything like me, or even if you don't, because it still makes Diana laugh as well.
Honestly, I love elves to death, and it's a really good satire parody of elves. I don't know if you can parody something that's fictional, or if that's just your elf at that point, because there's no real elves.
Yeah, I would still call it a parody.
You'd still call it a parody?
I would still call it a parody.
A parody
yeah.
of elves?
Yeah.
I think one of my final goofs. I just have a few more goofs. Things that bug me. I wasn't done.
Lay it on me.
When they get to the Mines of Moria and they're like, "Speak friend and enter," and then Gandalf can't remember the password. Frodo says it's a riddle and asks what the Elvish word for friend is. That's not a riddle. It says "speak friend and enter." That's a fucking instruction. That's the clearest. If you read that aloud in Elvish, the door would have opened.
That is the equivalent of a computer that says enter password and the password's password because that's the default password and no one changed it.
Or it would be the equivalent of a computer that says enter the word password as password. Like, not even default setting. Like, you just read it aloud. I hate that he says it's a riddle. It bothers me so much. I'm like, Frodo is smart. I'm not knocking him, but like...
That's not a riddle.
It's just an instruction.
Yeah, it is just an instruction, and it's like, Gandalf, you should have. Come on, dude.
Come on, man.
Come on. You should have got this.
I mean, he's getting old. Twice in the Moria scene, he can't remember something. He's like, I don't remember the password. He gets to the crossroad. He's like, I have no memory of this place. Oops.
And also, yeah.
Oops.
Yeah, your brain is tripping, my guy.
He also gets high a lot.
Yeah. I do have a quick question. Why would the Dwarven runes have an Elvish password?
They used to be friends.
Okay.
So the dwarves like knew how to get in, and that was like the elf entrance.
Oh.
It was like, you can use that door.
Okay. This is the secret elf door.
Yeah, I think there's other ways to get in, but
Okay.
that was like the one they were near.
All right, that seems shitty too. There's your secret elf door. It's separate but different. Okay. All right, dwarves. You got some problems now too, my guys.
The dwarves can use it and just speak elfish.
No,
I mean, that might make it worse, because
Now-
then it's like that's doors for everyone, and the elves can't use the other doors.
All right, you're on notice, dwarves. This is problematic, my guys.
Oh man, that's hard. That must be hard for you to say. You love dwarves.
I do normally like dwarves.
Dwarves are
quite
dope.
a bit. Yeah, just like quiet, hardworking people who are like, I build a thing. Just a bunch of engineers.
Just the guys who were like, yeah, I'm gonna hollow out this mountain and make a beautiful house.
Just a beautiful, beautiful house.
We're not gonna bother anybody.
Yeah, and whenever they are like a metaphor for industrialization, it always feels less intrusive. Where it's like they dug a mountain and hammered some metals, and it's like, okay. And then like when it cuts to like Sauron's army and stuff, and it's like they've gutted a whole forest and like an ecosystem is destroyed. Nothing ever seems really harmed by the dwarven effects on air quote effects on the environment. You
Yeah,
know?
they had to make up a demon.
Yeah.
And be like, how can we make the dwarves bad? I'm like, I guess they could wake a demon up.
I guess they could wake a demon up, and I'm like,
But
there
other
could be
than that, they-
modern day comparisons to be like they're fracking or like oil drilling or something. But it's
I
like,
guess, but I
they're-
don't really think they hurt the mountain that much.
No, I don't think they hurt any living creatures doing what they do. They kind of stay to themselves and just build stuff.
Yeah, especially because they're gonna live there, so they're not just like hollowing it out to like make it like an unusable mountain or like destroy that area. Like, no, we're gonna live here.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a standing mountain.
Yeah.
We're gonna hold it up.
I think it's very kind of them. I think they're doing very well. Well, I'm feeling good on Lord of the Rings, the
I'm
Fellowship
always
of the Ring.
feeling good on Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. I'll watch it again right now.
All right. I hope I didn't infuriate our listeners by my goofs and dunkings for a thing that I think is a high art and is incredible and I respect in every regard. And I can still respect a thing and tell jokes about it.
Andrew doesn't like any elves.
It's just they
That's
tire me.
kind of the thing.
They just tire me.
So Lord of the Rings not specific.
No, it's not specific to Lord of the Rings.
Seems like a weird thing to say though. If you think the dwarves are problematic, I'm looking at you, Andrew.
Hey,
You're saying you don't like this whole race of people?
I'm mad how people write them. All right, there could be some new angles here, but people are writing them as stereotypes, and I'm getting pretty tired of it, frankly.
Now he's an elf activist, you guys.
Thank you. Always have been. Always have been. Yes. Good day.
I want better representation for you, elves.
Yes, they can be many things, multitudes.
They don't just have to be assholes.
Yeah.
They could be nice people.
They don't have to be stupid at 200 years old. I understand that you live longer, but that's still not how lived experience works, as we've discussed before.
Yeah, I also
on the
get bothered by
podcast.
that. I don't think that comes up here in any way, but that is always annoying.
Yeah, when there's like an immortal race. I think we've discussed it with like Thor and stuff as well, where it's like, oh, he's only 300 years old. He's just a boy. He doesn't know that he shouldn't destroy your village. And it's like, I understand that is young in retrospect to how you live, how long you live, but also that's not how lived experiences work. You have intelligence greater than us. You would contextually put things together in a certain way.
Also bothered by that. Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't quite make sense. Well,
that's the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring.
Well, that's going to be it for this episode. We're going to ask the final question of what would you change. So now that we discussed everything we discussed, what would you change? Diana's answer might be nothing.
I've got a change.
No, okay. But before we do ask that final question, we'll remind you, as we do every week, to please take a moment to follow, subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podcast Addict, wherever you might be getting your podcasts. Go there, make sure that you've hit the follow or subscribe button, whatever they call it, and then leave a rating and review. It helps us move up the charts. It helps us get recommended to new listeners, and then it makes it more likely that new listeners will actually give us a shot and hit download and actually take that first step into our podcast.
You have the power to make us more popular and more successful. I'm sorry to put this on you, but even the smallest person can change the course of this podcast.
You brought up their size. It feels rude. It feels rude.
I hear it.
Yeah. You hear it?
Hear it.
Ah, I gotcha. I gotcha. Leave that in a review. Mention whether or not it is rude to bring up someone's size in giving them hopeful advice. Just leave a review that says it's rude to mention they're small, or it's not rude to mention that they're small.
Or leave any kind of review.
Or any kind of review.
It's your review. Make it 5 stars, though, please.
You do you.
At least 5.
And as well, if you want bonus episodes of this podcast, you can check us out over on Patreon. Patreon is a monthly subscription service where you can sign up at whatever you can afford, $1, $3, $10, $15, $20, you know what numbers are. And depending on your level, you will always get some kind of exclusive bonus content for signing up at that level. If you sign up at the $10 level, you'll get a bonus episode of this podcast every single month. This month, we did Aliens versus Predator Requiem.
That's 2.
That's the second Alien vs. Predator movie. That's available right now. And as well, if you sign up at that $10 hero level, you get immediate access to the back catalog. 80-plus episodes of exclusive content just sitting there waiting for you. Stranger Things Volume 2. Season 4, Volume 2. That's on there. So you can check out all that content over there.
It's all that good stuff. It's all waiting for you at patreon.com/fromsuperheroes.
That's patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. No pressure. If it's in the budget, amazing. Help us out. Get some cool content. If it's not, don't sweat it. Also, you can cancel and change in any month. Check it out. Patreon.com/fromsuperheroes. And now, let's go in for the close. Let's ask the final question of what would you change? Diana, what would you change?
It's huge. It's huge. Frodo has been stabbed by the Ringwraith. Arwen is taking him to Rivendell.
Okay.
He's dying.
Yeah.
I am going to take out that crossfade when Elrond and him share the screen together. And that's it. Perfect movie. You all know the crossfade I'm talking about. Everybody knows the really bad crossfade. It's got Elrond and it's got Frodo. And they're both there and it looks bad. And every other shot is so pretty. What is that doing there?
Love it.
I could have a second change if I needed to, though.
I love it. You know why I love it?
Why do you love it?
Here's my change. I had down, lose the editing that you do for the elves. The crossfade was a big one.
Okay.
The Frodo to Elrond crossfade, it almost feels like, I was actually kind of shocked when you said that you're like, Peter Jackson loves the elves, puts in more of the elves, all about the elves. Because the way that everything looks and is edited on the elves feels like someone making fun of them. Because it does feel like it's like Frodo was brought to the elves and then it crossfades to Elrond softly being like, and you brought the boy here. And I'm like, and like everything is bright white as doing these crazy transitions, and it does not suit the rest of the movie at all. And it's very strange as well because like I understand that like you're trying to suit the setting, but this story isn't told from the perspective of settings. It's told from the perspective of the Fellowship and predominantly from Frodo. And that one shot where Frodo sees like a glowing Galadriel or Arwen, yeah, that I was like, okay, but you're passing out, you're tripping, you're hallucinating. But when that continues and like Galadriel's like forest elves and then like Elrond and everybody, I'm like, you're all crossfade transitions, super bright weirdness. Doesn't match the tone of the rest of the movie. And the movie's not told from their perspective or from the perspective of locations. And I think that that's a line too far. You shouldn't be like, now we've added new scene transitions when we've entered a new location. It's a bridge too far for me. So I agree with you. I'm the exact same thing.
Whoa!
I think it needs to be every elf part completely re-edited, re-transitioned,
Oh
redone.
no, the rest of them I absolutely like.
It's
I
just
like
that one.
I like that the elves are like a little bit different. It's like, yeah, we are, we're hoity-toity and we're magical and we're immortal. We get different transitions, but that one's bad.
That one is bad.
Sometimes we just cut to Galadriel's eyes and she's in your head and then her eyes go really big. And I don't mind that. I think it's cool and it's creepy and it's fun.
Okay. Now, the in your head thing, I'm not even that mad at because I'm like, this is from Frodo's perspective. When it's from Frodo's perspective, I am on board.
Okay.
When it's something weird and it's not from Frodo's perspective, weirdness in a vacuum, I feel like it shouldn't happen just because we're in an elvish city.
All right, excellent. A similar change.
A similar change.
And if I had the gun to my head, have a different one, maybe Gandalf wouldn't breakdance fight. Maybe that scene would look a little better. The fight with Saruman is not good.
I don't hate it.
You don't hate the fight with Saruman? He spins on the ground in that circle?
I think it's fucking hilarious in the best way. I think it's hilarious in the best way. I think there's only so many ways that we can see two people in movies, whether it's psychic abilities, force field abilities, telekinetic abilities. There's only so many ways we could see two actors pretend to push one another and then kind of goofishly move around. This was actually different than every other intangible fight that I have seen over the past 30 years of film, and it made it stand out, and that alone made it enjoyable for me.
See, okay, that's fun, I guess. See, I would argue as wizards, they don't have to just use telekinesis. You can throw a fireball. You can throw an ice spell. You can not just be breakdance fighting. Every spell slot is open to you as a wizard.
He lives there. He doesn't want to trash his living room.
Gandalf doesn't.
Yeah, you're right.
Gandalf can throw a fireball.
Yeah, you got me there.
He doesn't want. It's like he brought him to the most bare room.
Yeah.
He brought him to a room that was literally just stone walls.
Okay, you got me there.
So they could have gone all out. So I get what you're saying.
I still like it.
If they only have telekinesis, it is actually. You're right. It's memorable.
Yeah.
But they have other powers.
Okay.
They're wizards.
You got me.
They're not telekinetic X-Men. But
I mean, one of them is.
Oh shit! Oh shit!
Literally.
Well, then he should have been better at it.
Literally one of them, and the other one is a telekinetic Jedi. So like they literally both have.
Fuck.
They have at some point in their career, they have both done the boring fight where you hold a hand up, pretend like you're pooping, and then it has to be edited in a way that looks interesting.
Well then, fuck. You got me there. We got an X-Men and a Jedi having an X-Men Jedi fight. And I guess we figured out that the Jedi win.
Yeah, we figured this one out. Well, that's going to be it for this week. That's going to be it for Lord of the Rings. We are going to be back next week. And next week, we are talking about the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spinoff.
Ooh, we haven't actually watched any of it yet, so this is very exciting. 2 fantasies in a row.
Oh, boy.
Big fantasy. Although no elves, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones doesn't have elves.
Yeah, no, they're a weird
There's magic.
Yeah. Yeah, if it weren't for a dragon, I would never even call it high fantasy.
There's other magic, too.
There is other magic.
Jon Snow was like immortal or something.
Yeah, you got me there. It's weird.
Oh, it's weird.
It's weird. But we've seen nothing at the time of recording, but next week we will be back talking about the first 3 episodes of House of the Dragon. In the meantime, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach me online at Ivimey, Ivimey.
You can reach me at Words of Diana, especially if you want to talk about Lord of the Rings. Tweet things at me. Legolas, are you an Aragorn? Are you a Hobbit? I actually don't know anyone who's a Hobbit. Oh, actually, I do. I'm lying. I'm wrong. I just thought of some friends of mine who are Hobbit people.
Yeah.
So I love it all, though. Send your Lord of the Rings stuff my way.
Throw those at her, only at me if you want to talk about fun video game ways to codify how to successfully transition that ring. If you have other ideas, I want to hear that, and I don't want to hear anything else, baby. That's going to be it. You can reach both of us at From Superheroes, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
Bye.